Welcome everyone to my chess channel, where I share exciting and high-quality chess videos. Today, I would like to share with you a thrilling game, a mind-blowing battle between two world-famous masters. Aleksander Wojtkiewicz playing white moving first and Fabiano Caruana playing black, defending with the queen side. Please enjoy the game. Opening, the battlefield awakens. The chessboard is alive, a war zone. Aleksander Wojtkiewicz and Fabiano Caruana deploy their troops. Every pawn is a soldier, every knight a lurking assassin. Tension crackles in the air, sparks of battle are about to ignite. Wojtkiewicz opens with e-four, thrusting his king's pawn forward. The center is claimed. The battlefield stirs as forces take their first positions. Caruana strikes back with the Sicilian, piercing the center. A sharp response. No ground will be given without a fight. Wojtkiewicz develops the knight to f3, cavalry ready to leap onto f5. Threats loom immediately. Caruana fianchettos his bishop, like a sniper taking position on the long diagonal. Silent but deadly. Wojtkiewicz storms the center, pawns collide. Sparks fly as territory is contested. Caruana slides the bishop into place, controlling vital squares like an archer raining arrows from afar. Wojtkiewicz snatches the c5 pawn, gaining early material. A small victory, but tension remains high. Caruana checks with the queen, jolting white's king side. Tempo swings violently. Immediate reaction is required. Wojtkiewicz blocks the check with the bishop, steadying the defense. A shield against the queen's menace. Caruana recaptures the pawn, asserting control over the right flank and threatening tactical skirmishes. Wojtkiewicz develops the bishop to c3, eyeing black's queen. Tactical threats emerge. Caruana develops the knight to f6, guarding key squares and preparing to castle. Coordination rises. Wojtkiewicz centralizes the bishop, reinforcing control and threatening tactical clashes. Caruana castles, king safe, behind pawns. The battlefield tightens. Danger lurks in every line. Wojtkiewicz mirrors with castling, securing his king. Armies poised. The storm is approaching. Caruana develops the knight to chicks, eyeing d4 and e5. Tension rises. Every square matters. Wojtkiewicz reinforces the knight, supporting pawns and preparing tactical maneuvers. Caruana pushes d, solidifying the center. The board is like a coiled spring, ready to explode. Wojtkiewicz repositions the knight to b3, aiming at c5 and preparing potential breakthroughs. Caruana moves the queen to b6, targeting b2 and threatening tactical skirmishes. Wojtkiewicz connects his rooks, eyes long-term coordination for attacks on flanks. Caruana pushes the pawn to a5, signaling queenside expansion and potential pawn storms. Wojtkiewicz advances the knight into central action, threatening key squares and ready to pounce. Caruana pins the knight on f3, tying white's forces and threatening exchanges. Wojtkiewicz challenges the pin with h3, questioning black's bishop. A subtle but critical probe. Tension rises. Caruana captures the knight, gaining material and opening lines. Tactical sparks fly. Wojtkiewicz recaptures the bishop, maintaining central presence. Forces reorganize for next clash. Caruana develops the rook to d8, controlling the central file. The battlefield tightens. Wojtkiewicz centralizes the rook to a8, eyeing the e-file for attacks. Tactical threats start forming. Caruana pushes the pawn to a4, gaining space on the queen side and threatening white's knights. Wojtkiewicz places the rook on done, reinforcing control of central files. Caruana repositions the knight, ready to defend or pivot for attacks. Wojtkiewicz captures the bishop on c7, winning the exchange and opening black's king side. Sparks fly across the board. Caruana recaptures, king slightly exposed but material balance maintained. Danger simmers. Wojtkiewicz checks with the queen, probing black's king and testing weaknesses. Caruana defends with f6, solidifying the king and blocking further checks. Wojtkiewicz repositions the bishop to c4, eyeing critical squares and coordinating for attacks. Caruana retreats the queen to a5, watching central and queenside squares, maintaining flexibility. Wojtkiewicz centralizes the queen, coordinating pieces and preparing tactical threats. Caruana returns the queen to c5, maintaining pressure and threatening exchanges. Wojtkiewicz captures the queen, forcing simplification and opening lines for rooks and minor pieces. Caruana recaptures the knight, now controlling central squares. Tension remains, the battle continues. Wojtkiewicz develops the bishop aggressively to d5, targeting black's rook and central squares. The clash is fully set for the middle game. Caruana swings the rook to c8, contesting the open file and preparing to pressure white's bishop. The battlefield tightens. Lines begin to overlap like intertwined armies. Wojtkiewicz doubles the rooks on the d-file, shoring up defense and readying potential counterattacks. The tension rises as every square becomes contested. Caruana pushes the rook to bait, eyeing white's queenside pawns and preparing tactical infiltration. The pressure mounts steadily. Wojtkiewicz pushes a3, preventing black's rook from landing on b4 and securing space for his pieces. Defensive maneuvering keeps the army coordinated. Caruana strikes with b5, advancing pawns on the queenside. The tension explodes. A pawn storm is brewing. Wojtkiewicz repositions the knight to d4, aiming for chicks and e6 squares. Central dominance is crucial, and white is testing black's defenses. Caruana captures the knight, exchanging central forces. Material is traded and lines open for rooks. Wojtkiewicz recaptures, rook now active on d4, ready to challenge black's central and queenside presence. Caruana brings the rook to 7, defending the c5 pawn and preparing counterplay along the c-file. Flexibility increases. Wojtkiewicz lifts the rook to e3, eyeing potential lateral swings to the king side. Strategic mobility becomes the keyword. Caruana repositions the knight to d7, shoring up defenses and ready to counter any white infiltration. Pieces dance cautiously. Wojtkiewicz pushes c3, securing central squares and controlling b4 darted. Slow but steady. Preparation for breakthrough. Caruana centralizes the knight to c5, exerting pressure and controlling key outposts. Strategic positioning dominates. Wojtkiewicz pushes f4, opening the king side for potential attack. The battlefield heats up as pawns advance boldly. Caruana moves the rook to b6, eyeing lateral defense and preparing for a counter on the queen side. Positioning becomes tense. Wojtkiewicz maneuvers the king to f2, connecting rooks and ensuring safety. Even kings march cautiously in this battlefield. Caruana responds by centralizing his king, maintaining coordination behind the pawn shield. Stability is key amidst looming threats. Wojtkiewicz pushes g4, advancing kingside pawns aggressively. Forces clash. Attack and defense entwine. Caruana pushes e6, solidifying central squares and preparing counterplay. Pawn walls strengthen under pressure. Wojtkiewicz retreats the bishop to a2, maintaining flexibility while eyeing long diagonals. Strategic patience in play. Caruana moves the king to a7, stepping closer to the center for coordination. The battlefield's tension rises palpably. Wojtkiewicz marches the king further, coordinating rooks for potential central or kingside activity. Risk and opportunity entwined. Caruana repositions the rook to sate, controlling the open file and preparing tactical strikes. Pieces flex their power. Wojtkiewicz lifts the rook to e2, ready to swing for defense or attack. Mobility is key. The army shifts like living entities. Caruana moves the rook to fate, reinforcing kingside defenses and preparing pressure along files. Tactical tension rises sharply. Wojtkiewicz pushes 5, striking at black's pawn chain. The battlefield erupts, lines of attack open aggressively. Caruana counterstrikes with a5, challenging the pawn thrust and locking key central squares. A clash of forces is now unavoidable. Wojtkiewicz repositions the rook to d2, reinforcing the second rank and preparing lateral action. Strategic patience guides the army. Caruana moves rook to b7, aiming to challenge white's queenside pawns and control lateral files. Wojtkiewicz repositions the bishop to d5, eyeing black's rooks and key squares. Tactical threats intensify. Caruana doubles down, moving rook to 7 to defend the 7th rank and centralize forces. Wojtkiewicz retreats the rook to dun, coordinating pieces for tactical flexibility. Calm before the storm. Caruana maneuvers king to date, stepping into safety while maintaining central coordination. Wojtkiewicz doubles rooks on the d-file, preparing for full-scale confrontation. Pressure builds steadily. Caruana repositions king to a7, stepping closer to defending crucial squares. The battlefield hums with tension. Wojtkiewicz brings rook to f1, eyeing f-file for potential attack. Lions are poised for tactical fireworks. Caruana repositions the knight to d7, shoring up defense and threatening counterplay. Wojtkiewicz centralizes the other rook, reinforcing control and readying for potential breakthroughs. Caruana advances knight to b6, aiming to block white's plans and secure key squares. Wojtkiewicz retreats the bishop to a2, maintaining flexibility and long diagonal pressure. Caruana centralizes the rook to 6, controlling the 7th rank and preparing to infiltrate white's position. The battlefield tightens. White must tread carefully. Wojtkiewicz steps his king up to e3, coordinating rooks and bishop, preparing for counterplay. Tension rises as kings enter the battlefield. Caruana moves rook to bait, threatening white's queenside and preparing to push pawns forward. Strategic pressure builds. Wojtkiewicz retreats the king to f3, balancing safety and coordination. Every step counts. One misstep could be fatal. Caruana's knight jumps to c4, attacking key squares and threatening tactical forks. White's army braces for impact. Wojtkiewicz captures the knight, exchanging material to reduce immediate threats. A cautious but necessary decision. Caruana recaptures with pawn, opening the b-file and creating a passed pawn. Danger escalates. The queenside becomes lethal. Wojtkiewicz brings the king to e3, centralizing and coordinating for defense. The army prepares for decisive actions. Caruana pushes the rook to b5, eyeing lateral penetration and cutting off escape routes. The battlefield heats up. Wojtkiewicz steps back to f3, maintaining flexibility and guarding key squares. Caruana doubles rooks on the b-file, threatening full penetration and forcing white's forces into passive positions. Wojtkiewicz lifts the rook to bone, contesting the b-file and slowing black's advance. A desperate defense begins. Caruana advances rook to b3, forcing white's pieces to react. Pressure mounts. The battlefield narrows. Wojtkiewicz brings the other rook to dun, defending key squares and preparing lateral support. Calm before decisive strikes. Caruana captures pawn on b2, opening lines towards white's king. E. Tactical fireworks ignite. Wojtkiewicz moves rook to cone, contesting the c-file and trying to hold black's penetration. Caruana swings rook to h2, threatening infiltration on the king side. White's king is vulnerable. Tension peaks. Wojtkiewicz steps king to g3, trying to escape the looming threat. Black's forces are coordinating for the kill. Caruana doubles rooks along the second rank, cutting off escape routes. White's army is trapped. Final blows loom. Wojtkiewicz advances rook to d5, attempting counterplay along the fifth rank. Hopes flicker amidst overwhelming pressure. Caruana swings the rook to c2, controlling the c-file and preparing unstoppable infiltration. White's defenses collapse under coordinated fire. Wojtkiewicz moves rook to a5, desperate to counterattack or stop pawns. But Caruana's army is perfectly aligned. Caruana captures the rook on cone, sealing the game. The battlefield falls, the king is exposed, and resistance is futile. A clean, calculated victory, a tactical masterpiece. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.